When a broke veteran fixes a stranger's truck in the middle of nowhere, he expects nothing but a quiet, "Thank you." What he gets instead is a visit from a billionaire who turns his world upside down. But why him? And why now? The highway stretched like a ribbon of faded gray beneath a sky bruised with twilight. Snow flurries danced in the air, illuminated by the weak beam of Tom's headlights as his rig rumbled steadily across the empty interstate. The world outside was quiet, too quiet. Just wind, engine hum, and the occasional buzz from the radio he rarely bothered to switch on. Tom Dalton, 58, hadn't always been a trucker. Once he wore a uniform, barked commands, and lived by the rhythm of deployments. Now he slept in his cab, made instant coffee on a hot plate, and ran deliveries coast to coast. He didn't mind the silence. Silence didn't ask him questions. Silence didn't remind him of the flag folded neatly in his glove box, or the framed photo of his son, James, tucked behind his seat. It was past 10 p.m. when Tom spotted the hazard lights. A semi sat awkwardly on the shoulder, half-tilted like a wounded animal. As he slowed and pulled over, he instinctively scanned for threats. Old habits never quite died. A younger man stood outside the truck, pacing, phone in hand. The guy looked out of place. Clean jacket, no grease under the nails, brand new boots with soles that still gripped. A rookie for sure. Tom stepped out of his cab, his knees protesting against the cold. "You broken down, kid?" he called out. The young man looked up, startled. "Yeah, I think it's the axle. Or, I don't really know. The damn thing just started pulling, right?" Then there was this loud pop. Tom walked closer, squatting down beside the front right tire. Pop usually means bad news. "Let me see." He pulled out a flashlight and inspected the undercarriage with quiet focus. Bent mount, misaligned tie rod. A job for a shop, but Tom had patched worse with less. "You got tools?" Tom asked, already pulling gloves from his back pocket. The guy hesitated. "I've got a wrench set? I'm not really used to working on these." Tom grunted. "Figured. You got a name?" "Zach." "Tom." They shook hands. Tom's grip was firm, calloused. Zach's fingers were cold, unsure. For the next hour, Tom worked in silence, only breaking it to ask for a socket or hold a beam of light steady. Zach tried to help but mostly got in the way, apologizing each time. Tom didn't mind. He'd worked with worse. He also noticed Zach kept glancing at his phone, but never answered any calls. "You driving solo?" Tom asked while tightening a bolt with a grunt. Zach nodded. "Yeah, my dispatcher's not too happy about the delay." "Dispatcher will get over it. Better late than dead." A small chuckle escaped Zach. "You always been driving?" "No," Tom replied, eyes still under the truck. "Used to serve. Army. Logistics. Afghanistan." Zach grew quiet. His eyes flicked to the flag decal on Tom's dashboard. The kind veterans kept like quiet badges. Then down to Tom's hands, which had paused just a breath too long at the word Afghanistan. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost reluctant. "A buddy of mine shipped out there years ago. Never came back. Did you lose anyone over there?" Tom didn't respond immediately, just kept working. Then softly, "My son. Same war. Different unit. We left on the same flight. I came back. He didn't." Zach opened his mouth, but no words came out. He simply nodded respectfully. Tom finished tightening the last bolt and wiped his hands on a rag. "You're good for now. Won't last forever, but it'll get you to a shop." Zach stared at him in disbelief. "You just fixed it? Just like that?" Tom shrugged. "That's what we do out here. Help each other. Don't need a reason." Zach looked like he wanted to say more. Maybe explain himself, maybe confess something, but he hesitated. Tom walked back toward his own rig. "Drive safe, Zach. Keep an eye on that pull." Zach called out, "Wait, can I at least pay you? Buy you dinner or something?" Tom didn't stop walking. "Don't need your money. Just pass it forward." As the older man climbed into his truck and started the engine, Zach stood there watching him go, a strange expression on his face. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small GoPro clipped to his chest, and pressed the button to stop recording. Inside his cab, Tom leaned back into his worn seat, rubbing his sore knee. He didn't know the young man's story. Didn't need to. All he knew was a truck was broken, a man was stranded, and it was the right thing to do. That was the code. He reached for the thermos of lukewarm coffee, took a sip, and stared out at the snowy road. Then he put the truck in gear and drove off into the night. The city was a sharp contrast to the silence of the open road. Honking cars, neon-lit windows, and the distant rumble of construction. Zach took the elevator to the 32nd floor of a sleek glass building in downtown Chicago, the kind of place where you needed a badge and a name that mattered. His was Zachary Whitmore, though few in the building dared call him that. Most just said Mr. Whitmore or Sir. But here he was, dressed in faded jeans, boots still stained with road dust, and the cheap windbreaker he'd worn during his week undercover. A few junior producers in the lobby did a double-take when they saw him, not used to the air of Whitmore Freight and Logistics, looking like he just rolled out of a truck stop. He walked straight into the editing suite, tossing a hard drive onto the table. "This is from Oklahoma. Broken axle, late night. Met someone." The lead editor, Tanya, raised an eyebrow. "Someone interesting?" Zach nodded. "A guy named Tom. Fixed my truck with no tools, no reward. Barely said 10 words. He sleeps in his rig. Lost his son in the war." Tanya slid the drive into the console. "And you caught it all on camera?" "Almost all," Zach replied, sitting on the armrest of a chair, watching the screen flicker to life. "He didn't know I was filming. I had the chest rig on the whole time." The footage played shaky and raw. The hum of wind, Tom's deep voice, the scrape of metal and grit. The screen filled with shots of hands working beneath the truck, close-ups of Tom's face under the cold night light. His words were simple, but his presence carried weight. Quiet, solid, like a man carved from stone. The production team gathered around. A few took notes. Others nodded along. Then came the part where Tom mentioned his son. Everyone went still. Tanya leaned back, arms folded. "This is gold. It's real. We can center the episode around this. Build up to that moment." But Zach didn't say anything. He just stared at the screen, Tom's face frozen mid-sentence. "It's not an episode," Zach finally muttered. "What?" Tanya asked, tilting her head. "I don't want this to be a segment. This guy, he's different. He's not just another hard luck story. He lives the values we write on our brochures but never follow through on. I can't just package him and move on." "So what are you thinking?" Tanya asked, cautious now. "I want to do something for him. Real. Not just PR." She narrowed her eyes. "You're getting personal." Zach didn't flinch. "Maybe I am." Silence settled in the room. Then someone from the back said, "If we go off script, it'll take time. Resources." "I've got both," Zach replied. "And it's my family's company." Hundreds of miles away, Tom was parked behind a gas station outside Wichita, stirring instant coffee with the end of a plastic spoon. His breath fogged in the morning chill as he leaned against the cab of his truck, watching the sun rise over a field of frozen grass. The truck creaked when he climbed back inside. The dashboard lights flickered. The battery was acting up again. He made a mental note to check the connections later. For now, he had a delivery to make in Missouri and only enough fuel to get halfway there. He didn't complain. He didn't expect help. He just drove. The interior of his cab was cluttered but clean. A few old war medals hung near the visor, next to a faded photograph of a young soldier in uniform. James. Always watching. Always near. Tom's days were all the same. Pick up freight, deliver freight, fix whatever broke, sleep, repeat. The loneliness didn't bother him. What did bother him was the feeling that everything he once stood for had been forgotten. Later that day, his trailer door jammed. He pulled out his toolbox, duct tape, zip ties, and patience, and made it work. A younger driver at the dock offered help. Tom smiled politely but declined. "Gotta keep the muscles moving." The other driver chuckled. "You're like the MacGyver of truckers." Tom tipped his cap. "Nah, MacGyver had better tools. Back in Chicago, Zach stood at a conference table across from his father, Richard Whitmore, the founder, the legend, the man who built their logistics empire with steel and sweat. Zach had prepared a proposal: a fund to support veterans in trucking, a mentorship program, a custom-built truck adapted for veterans with disabilities, named after Tom's son. Richard listened, arms crossed. "Why him?" he finally asked. "Because he reminds me of what this industry used to stand for," Zach said. "Honor, resilience, brotherhood." Richard leaned back, expression unreadable. Then slowly he nodded. "You've got one shot. Make it count." Back on the road, Tom pulled into a dusty diner off Route 66. He ordered meatloaf, read the same old local paper, and never noticed the black SUV parked 2 lots away, engine still running. Inside that SUV, a production assistant checked a tablet screen with Tom's rig blinking on a GPS map. Zach had found him again, and this time he wasn't coming alone. The air was dry, the sky a dull slate gray, that kind of colorless stretch between winter and spring that made even movement feel heavy. Tom sat behind the wheel of his old Freightliner, parked at a truck stop just outside Amarillo. He wasn't in a hurry. The morning shipment had fallen through, and he decided to rest his back and sip on the lukewarm coffee from a vending machine inside the convenience store. It was bitter and tasted faintly of cardboard, but it was warm, and that was good enough. He leaned back in the driver's seat, rubbing his knees through worn jeans. The joints had been bothering him more lately, especially in the cold. His rig wheezed faintly as it idled, like it too was getting old and tired. Then he noticed it, the hum of an approaching engine, too smooth to be a truck. A sleek black SUV, tinted windows and all, rolled into the gravel lot like it didn't belong there. It came to a quiet stop in the space beside him. Strange, Tom thought. Wrong kind of place for a corporate type. He watched, waiting. Then the driver's door opened and out stepped Zach. No ball cap, no windbreaker, no fake oil smudges or boots. He was clean-shaven, sharp-dressed in a tailored gray jacket over a black tee, jeans that probably cost more than Tom made last week, and polished leather shoes. The transformation was jarring. Tom blinked once, slow and unimpressed. "Afternoon," Zach said with a hesitant smile. Tom didn't respond, just opened the door of his cab and stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. He folded his arms. "You lost, city boy?" Zach chuckled awkwardly. "I was hoping you'd say something like that." Tom didn't smile. Zach took a breath. "Look, I owe you an explanation." Tom raised an eyebrow, still saying nothing. "I'm not a rookie trucker. I was trucking, but undercover. My name's Zachary Whitmore. My family owns Whitmore Freight." Tom's expression didn't change. Zach pressed on. "I've been traveling anonymously, trying to understand what our drivers really go through. Your help that night, it wasn't just about fixing a truck. It reminded me why this whole company exists." Tom glanced toward the SUV. "So, what you come here to apologize?" Zach shook his head. "To thank you, and to give you something." With a motion to the driver, the SUV's passenger stepped out and walked toward a flatbed trailer hitched behind. It was covered by a black tarp, tied down in tight military knots. Tom narrowed his eyes. The assistant untied the canvas, letting it fall. Underneath gleamed a brand-new Kenworth T680, jet black paint, chrome details, and a cabin that looked more like a cockpit than a truck. It sat like a beast waiting to roar. Tom stared, silent. "It's yours," Zach said quietly. "Custom-built. Heated orthopedic seating, integrated PTSD support lighting, built-in meditation module, sleep-regulated temperature zones. Even has adaptive cruise that learns your route habits." Tom's mouth twitched, somewhere between disbelief and suspicion. Zach wasn't done. "Inside the cab, there's a drawer with your son's badge number carved into the handle. I figured you'd want him with you." A long pause. Then Tom spoke, flat and guarded. "You buy trucks for every old guy who changes your tire?" Zach smiled, eyes softening. "No, just the ones who leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about strength." Tom didn't reply, but his jaw moved, clenching and unclenching. And that's not all. Zach added, we're building a mentorship program for new drivers, especially veterans. Real paid positions. You'd be leading it. On the road. Teaching. Not locked behind a desk. Now Tom looked at him. Really looked. Then Zach delivered the final blow. His voice quiet, almost reverent. We're also starting a foundation for veterans in the industry. Trucking saved a lot of lives after the war, gave guys something steady. We want to give back. The foundation will fund mental health, repairs, housing, whatever's needed. Tom said nothing, just stared, his eyes suddenly glassy. We're naming it after your son. The James McCoy Foundation. The wind moved gently across the lot. A bird called in the distance. Somewhere a dog barked. But Tom stood still. A mountain of a man, battle-hardened and silent. Then something shifted in his face. A crack in the stone. His shoulders dropped. His breath hitched. And quietly, without a word, one single tear ran down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. Zach waited. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Tom finally inhaled, steadying himself. Then, voice rough as gravel, he said, "You sure about this?" Zach nodded. "Absolutely." Another long pause. Then, softly, Tom replied, "All right then." That evening, the sun dipped low behind the truck stop, casting golden light across the new Kenworth's gleaming chrome. Tom sat inside the cab, hands on the wheel, running his fingers across the dash. He touched the small drawer Zach had mentioned, opened it. Inside lay a polished metal badge, worn with time but lovingly preserved. On it, James McCoy, USMC. He closed the drawer slowly, took a breath. Tom felt something new, purpose that wasn't survival. Outside, Zach stood watching the sunset, hands in his pockets. "Ready to roll?" he called out. Tom opened the window, smirked. "You keep up with me, rookie?" Zach laughed. "We'll see." And as the two trucks pulled away from the lot, the old rig following behind the new, proud one, something else drove with them. A mission, a name, and the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. The first signs of change came quietly. An email here, a phone call there. The documentary had only been live for 2 days when things began to shift. At first, Tom thought nothing of it. He hadn't even watched the thing. He figured it was just another company puff piece, a feel-good stunt from some billionaire kid. But by the end of the week, something undeniable had happened. It had gone viral. Not just trucker viral. National viral. News outlets picked it up, first local, then regional, then national. Morning shows opened segments with clips of the dusty footage of Tom kneeling in the cold beside Zach's broken axle. Military forums began sharing it like wildfire. Reddit threads titled "The Last Real Man on the Road" climbed to the front page. Veterans from all eras, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, filled the comments with stories of their own isolation, their own roads, their own ghosts. And at the center of it all was a man who hadn't asked for any of it. Tom. He didn't even know about it until a waitress at a roadside diner in Kansas asked for a photo. "You're him, right? The truck guy with the foundation." Tom blinked. "I guess." Zach's team called later that day. "It's happening," they said. "You're becoming the face of something bigger." Tom sighed. Never wanted to be a damn face of anything. But it didn't matter. The world had already decided. The donations rolled in faster than anyone anticipated. 2 million in the first week. 8 by the end of the month. Corporate sponsors. Grassroots campaigns. Even a retired general donated his entire speaking tour earnings. People didn't just want to give money, they wanted to give themselves. Volunteers showed up. Drivers offered to mentor. Mechanics offered to train. A retired therapist from Denver showed up with a portable office and said, "Put me to work." The foundation bought an abandoned logistics depot on the outskirts of Nashville. Within weeks, it had been transformed. Repaved lots, newly painted classrooms, truck simulators, a dorm wing, and a modest memorial at the entrance. At its center, a bronze plaque. James McCoy Foundation. For every veteran still carrying the weight of silence. You are not alone. Tom attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony in his old jeans and clean boots. When asked to speak, he declined twice. But after a quiet moment with Zach, and a nod from a group of new recruits in uniform jackets, he stepped up to the mic. He didn't read a script, didn't carry notes. He just looked at the crowd, cleared his throat, and said, "I spent a long time thinking I didn't matter anymore. Turns out I was just hiding. And I think a lot of us out there are still hiding. But maybe now we come out. One by one." He paused. "We're not broken. We're just heavy with things the world stopped seeing. But not anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the applause. Long, raw, and thunderous. Reporters later called it the most powerful minute of television that year. Of course, with fame came the usual parasites. Politicians tried to attach themselves to the story, photo ops, honorary medals, campaign soundbites. But Tom had no patience for them. He refused talk shows, declined awards, ignored calls from 2 state governors and a congressman who wanted to name a stretch of interstate after him. Instead, he kept doing what he always did, driving. The new Kenworth rumbled across the country, delivering freight during the week and pulling into training centers on weekends. He mentored by doing, showing rookies how to chain tires in sleet, how to recognize the sound of an overworked clutch, and how to survive when you're 1,000 miles from anyone who knows your name. Tom never raised his voice, never sought attention, but the rookies followed him like a legend on 2 legs. Some called him the Iron Ghost, others Coach Tom, but most just called him Sir. It was dusk when Tom walked through the main hallway of the Nashville Training Center, the concrete cool beneath his boots. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. He passed a classroom where young veterans sat around a whiteboard learning route logistics. A few looked up and nodded. Tom nodded back. He moved to the driving simulator room, where a 24-year-old Marine named Olivia sat behind a wheel, sweating through a practice scenario in snowy terrain. "Too heavy on the brake," Tom said quietly. She jumped, then laughed. "You always sneak up like that?" "Only when the simulator's about to spin you into a ditch." He smiled just a little and kept walking. Outside, a real truck idled in the lot, one of the Foundation's newer rigs. A young Navy vet in a wheelchair was being helped into the cab by another recruit. They laughed as the hoist clicked into place. Tom watched, hands in his pockets. Then he turned toward the Foundation's memorial wall. Dozens of names now filled the steel panels, not of the fallen, but of those who had come through. Each one had a date beside it. The day they completed training, the day they got their CDL, the day they started living again. Tom approached a small section still under construction. He pulled a Sharpie from his pocket and added a new name. Michael P. Army 2025. First day sober. First mile driven. He capped the marker and stepped back, eyes calm. The wind rustled the nearby flag, and Tom wasn't haunted by the road behind him. He was lit by the path ahead. This story reminds us that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness ripple far beyond what we can see. What would you do if someone gave you everything just for doing the right thing? Comment below. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers. With your help, we can hit this milestone together. We would appreciate your follow. Embrace the journey for more stories that matter.